Apologies, everyone, and thank you for your patience while we worked out the technical difficulties with our audio. Just when we think we've found all the gremlins in the system, we get surprised by a new one. So I appreciate everyone's patience. We did welcome everyone, but we didn't quite get to the adoption of the agenda. So Council, moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. We do have a proclamation request this evening that May 17th, 2022 be proclaimed as International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia in the District of Squamish. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. You want to speak to that, please? Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a case where small things make a big difference. Each time a proclamation like this is brought to being, every time a rainbow flag is raised, every time a pride parade is held, with every new rainbow crosswalk that gets created, it makes it a little bit easier for a transgender person to discover who they truly are, to maybe tell their parents who they truly are, or to maybe one day get elected to sit in a chair like this one. So this proclamation is definitely a small thing for most people. And for me, it's huge. As the parent of a transgender child, it's small things like this that all add up and make a huge difference for people like my child. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor French. And look forward to passing this proclamation and continuing to build a community that's inclusive of everyone. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Council, we have a few bylaws to adopt before we get to the public hearing. That the District of Squamish Property Tax Rate Bylaw number 2913/2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. That District of Squamish Alternative Municipal Tax Collection Scheme Bylaw number 2900/2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Pettengill, seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the District of Squamish Sewer Rates and Regulation Bylaw number Amendment Bylaw number 2903/2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the District of Squamish Solid Waste Utility and Regulation Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 2902/2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the District of Squamish Water Rates, Regulations, and Water Extension Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 2901/2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. We had some correspondence under item 5, a request for a letter of support from the Squamish Wind Sports Society, and the staff recommendation is that we provide the letter of support to the Wind Sports Society for their Tourism Relief Fund grant application. Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Race. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we are on to item 6, which is the public hearing for District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw Amendment Bylaw for Upper Finch Drive rezoning number 2811/2021. I'll just read the statement to open the hearing. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act requirements to allow the public to present and to provide submissions to council respecting the proposed bylaw amendment bylaw for Upper Finch Drive rezoning number 2811/2021. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether speaking in favor or against the proposed zoning amendment. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Please note that the public hearing is not an opportunity for members of the public to have their questions answered by staff or by council. Any questions or points of clarification can be directed to staff by contacting the planning department. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations. Council is here to listen and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the public or each other during the public hearing. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district website. Media are often present at public hearings, and the public should feel free to advise the media if they don't want their picture taken. Up to and as part of this hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of staff's report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been added to the electronic agenda and to the electronic public hearing package available on the district website. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by viewing the electronic agenda. Submissions will be uploaded by staff as they are received. We are trying to make this hearing and all of our public hearings a safe space for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. Therefore, I ask that members of the public maintain order and quiet during the hearing. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. I'll now ask the planning department to outline what the bylaw is proposing.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator with Community Planning. Tonight, I'm here to present a public hearing for rezoning application at 1050, 1056, 1057, and 1070 Finch Drive. At the April 19th, 2022 regular council meeting, Council gave Bylaw 2811 second reading and scheduled a public hearing for this evening. Subject properties are located on the east end of Finch and Raven Drive, totaling 8.5 hectares in area, and are zoned RS1. The western portion of 1050 Finch is relatively flat before rising steeply to an upper bench area in the center of the site and transitioning to a steep mountainside further to the east. The properties were developed with single-unit dwellings accessed by a steep gravel driveway from Finch Drive. This application seeks to rezone the properties from RS1 to Comprehensive Development Zone 101. The CD 101 zone allows for apartments, townhouses, and duplexes. The proposed housing mix includes 20 duplex units, 18 townhouses, and 194 apartment units between 4 apartment buildings. 2 of the apartment buildings are proposed on the lower portion of the site, accessed from Finch and Raven Drives. 2 other apartment buildings, as well as the duplexes and townhomes, are proposed on the upper bench area of the site. The proposed apartment building height is 22.5 meters or 6 stories, whichever is less. The townhouse building height is 10.68 meters, and the duplex building height is 9 meters. A reduced parking standard for the apartment dwelling units is proposed in the CD 101 zone by reducing the requirement by 0.25 spaces per unit type for the for sale units, providing 1 space per unit type for the rental units, and reducing the visitor parking space requirement to 0.1 spaces per unit type for 94 of the 194 units. This represents a reduction of 60 parking stalls for the apartment units and 9 visitor parking stalls for the apartment units from the standard zoning bylaw requirement. The reduced parking standard would result in 990 square meters of green space as opposed to providing paved parking stalls. Of the 194 apartment units, 32 are proposed to be secured as affordable rental units, and 2 are proposed to be donated to the Squamish Community Housing Society. 38% of the apartment units will be 1-bedroom, 30% will be 2-bedroom, 12% will be 2-bedroom plus den, and 20% will be 3-bedroom. This unit mix is consistent with the Hillside housing policies and meets the inclusive housing policy in the OCP. The duplexes and townhomes will contain 3 bedrooms. The proponent has provided geotechnical and environmental reports to assess the net developable area of the site. Of the overall 8.5 hectares, 3.9 hectares of the site is considered the net developable area once environmentally sensitive areas and steep slopes over 40% grade are removed. This rezoning would qualify for all of the density bonus options outlined in the Loggers East neighborhood plan, but is still under the allowable base density. The density bonus for market rental housing has been included in the CD 101 zone. This would allow up to 15 additional apartment dwelling units, provided they are secured as market rental and have an average unit size of 1,000 square feet. The applicant has committed to building 4 of the market rental units in the affordable rental apartment building and is intending to include the remaining 11 market rental units in the 3 other apartment buildings on site once the detailed design of those buildings has been completed. This application triggers the Community Amenity Contribution Policy. The applicant has made the following offer, which exceeds the CAC policy. For on-site affordable housing and critical amenities contribution, 32 units secured as affordable rental units, which represents 15% of the units and exceeds the 10% requirement in the policy. Donation of 1 2-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom apartment unit with a combined minimum size of 2,000 square feet to the Squamish Community Housing Society with an estimated construction cost of $800,000. A cash in lieu and critical amenities amount of $1 million. Construction of a Finch Drive to Loggers Lane multi-use path. For the active transportation contribution, construction of a Squamish Legacy Sports Park multi-use path and a Finch Drive to Raven Drive multi-use path. For the park's contribution, construction of ski jumps and a shelter in the Squamish Legacy Sport Park, and construction of children facilities in a public park on the 1050 Finch site. Total offer amounts to $2,665,801, and the CAC policy target is $1,882,770 for this application. The developer is proposing the following additional amenities noted on the slide that will be secured in the land development agreement, and I will be outlining this on the next slide. So the following items will be secured in the land development agreement. Donation of 1 2-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom apartment unit with a minimum combined area of 2,000 square feet to the Squamish Community Housing Society. Construction of 32 affordable rental apartment units, 4 market rental units, and that these units and the units to be donated to the Squamish Community Housing Society will be constructed in the first phase of the development. A cash in lieu of critical amenities amount of $1 million. Construction of a Finch Drive to Loggers Lane multi-use path. Construction of a multi-use path in the Squamish Legacy Sports Park. Construction of a Finch Drive to Raven Drive multi-use path. Construction of ski jumps and shelter for the Squamish Legacy Sports Park. Construction of children's facilities in the public park at 1050 Finch. Construction of dedicated childcare space for 25 children, a minimum of 1,000 square feet in size. Construction of 1 commercial retail unit or additional childcare space, a minimum of 1,000 square feet in size. Commitment to provide storage space in the apartment units. Commitment to provide an e-bike and car sharing program for future strata residents. A commitment to build the duplexes and townhomes to Step 5 of the BC Energy Step Code. A commitment that all units will be powered by a low carbon energy source and that no gas will be provided to any of the units. Confirmation of the approximate size, location, and the timing of delivery of the proposed parks and trail connections from the subject property to the adjacent trail network. A commitment to provide public access statutory right-of-ways over all park and trail areas on the subject property, and a $50,000 cash contribution to support First Nations youth programs and facilities. The specific timing of delivery of each of these items has been summarized in the staff report. To inform the community per policy, the project was posted to the district's development showcase and a development sign has been posted at the site. Notice of the public hearing was mailed to properties within 100 meters and advertised in the Squamish Chief. My slides notes that no comments were received. However, 2 comments have been received since this presentation was prepared, and both shared concerns for the reduced parking standard and the density proposed and were not supportive of the development. A letter of support has been received from the Sea to Sky Nordics, who manage the Squamish Legacy Sports Park. Staff recommend that following the public hearing, that Bylaw 2811 be given 3rd reading, and that prior to adoption, the applicant enter into a land development agreement to secure the applicant's community amenity contribution, including the items identified in the staff report and previously mentioned. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions at this time.
Council, do you have any clarifying questions for staff before I go to the public? Okay. I'll now ask the applicant or the representative to comment on the proposed zoning, should they wish, after which anyone else will be given the opportunity to speak or make their submission. I do have a list of names here, and I will call those individuals to the podium first. After these speakers, I will call for any other interested parties to speak, and then you simply need to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. For all speakers, please approach the podium and start your remarks by clearly stating your name and address or neighborhood. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council in order that everyone has an opportunity to speak this evening. Details to participate on the phone or on WebEx are displayed on the screen, or will be shortly. And for those who have logged in from your computer or are watching the live stream of the meeting, instructions are also included on the district website. If you are participating electronically this evening, to get on the speakers list, if you are on telephone, you raise your hand by dialing *3, or if you're on WebEx on your computer or cell phone, by opening the participant panel and by clicking on the hand icon. Please note that there will be a moderator who will communicate with speakers participating electronically. When it's your turn to speak, you'll receive a voice prompt on the telephone or a dialog box on WebEx. Please remember to put your hand down after you have finished speaking by just clicking on the hand icon again on WebEx and *3 again on the phone. If you've already spoken and then wish to speak again or to provide more or new comments, please raise your hand again or add your name to the speakers list. And once I've indicated that we have covered all the first-time speakers, we will offer folks additional speaking opportunities. So I do have the proponent listed as number 4. Mr. Wood, do you want to wait or speak first? Yep, go ahead, please.
Of you, after 3.5 years of the Loggers East sub-area plan and this rezoning process, we have an amazing opportunity at Finch Drive to build community and sustainable living. We can all agree that climate change is a global crisis, and at DHD we want to make a difference. DHD has been building sustainably in the Sea to Sky corridor for almost 20 years. When we built Finch Drive, when we built Skyridge, it was the largest built green community in Squamish. We also built a net zero home. And in its first year of operation or of existence, it produced 3 times the amount of energy that it consumed. Building homes is one thing, but sustainable practice goes right down to your core policies and the way you behave. At Finch Drive, we had 5 single-family homes on the site, and we dismantled them sustainably. We took them apart and we reused all the material. We sold it, we gave it away, and we diverted over 99% of the material from the landfill. It's an amazing story. We're going to put a case study together, but the garbage, the DOS garbage bills were just over a couple $1,000s for those 5 homes. So it was a pretty cool story. Finch Drive as a new community, it's 20 acres. It's really going to be a community of the future. We're going to use advanced building techniques such as Step Code 5, Net Zero Ready. We're going to use solar power. And so the homes are going to be quite unique and new for Squamish. Also, the site strategies we're going to employ using natural colors, the shapes, we're staggering the buildings. We've also used scale transition. So when you're down on the valley floor on Finch Drive, looking up, the buildings will be integrated into the hillside. And so we're proud of those techniques to try to limit and integrate into the existing landscape that we've got with us. We're also very proud of the CAC package, and certainly Brian detailed it. So I won't go through it all, but we have 34 affordable housing units, and we've donated 2 of them, which has set a nice precedent, and we hope that that helps with rezoning applications coming forward. The policy states that we were to donate approximately 1.9 million, and we put together a package for over 3.6 million, so almost double. So thank you for your support. We're looking forward to taking the next step in designing and building these homes in this amazing new community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Next up is Spencer Fitchin. Just your name and neighborhood, and then you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, Spencer Fitchin, Garibaldi Highlands. And first off, I'd like to say that I'm generally in strong support of developments such as this that are looking to set a good bar for performance and density and so on and so forth. I only really have one concern with the project, one major concern, and that is the whether or not enough consideration has been given for the density of development in such close proximity to an existing and a proposed high pressure gas pipeline. And I'm wondering if the district has, or the developer have actually considered those things in the hazard risk assessment of that many people close to that high hazard. That's my only concern. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission. Linnea Voss? Just your name and neighborhood or address, and 5 minutes.
Ann Voss, I'm 1024 Finch Drive, right beside Jason's proposed. I'd wonder if you're going to answer that question.
The public hearing is an opportunity for the public to make submissions, and so we don't do a Q&A as part of that. If council has clarifying questions, they can ask them of staff afterwards.
Okay. So I'm generally not in favor of this. I've spoken to several of you about it over the years. I'd like to raise the concern that several years ago when Loggers East community meeting was held at the Adventure Center, many of myself and some of my neighbors came. Most of us who were not developers were writing on the Post-it notes there, no condos. I took pictures of them, and it felt like it didn't really go very far. So I'd like that to go out there, because now we're getting 4 condo buildings. And I do have a question. I don't know if it can be clarified here. It's not a question and answer, but the how many stories the apartment building is. There was a mention of how many meters it was, but if that can be clarified at some point. And the connection to local trails, how would you connect to local trails? And that's all I'll go with for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Voss. Next up, I have Rick Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors, staff. My name is Rick Smith. I speak to you as the president of the Sea to Sky Nordics Club, a local Nordic club based out of Squamish. We have also a mandate to look after and steward the Legacy Park, which sits at the end of Raven Drive, right at the foot of the proposed development. I speak in favor of the proposal. The Legacy Park, which was created approximately 10 years ago, one of the founding members of our club still sits in this room today. Official opening of the Legacy Park 2015, after 3 years of meeting all the requirements for a crown lease, to have that 17 acres, that beautiful 17 acres rezoned from light industrial to presently a beautiful recreational gem in the geographical center of Squamish. We're exceptionally proud of this little park. At the time, part of our management plan was to have the park be fully accessible. The funding was not immediately available to us to do that. The part of the proposal for this development would enable us to have the funding to make this beautiful park be fully accessible. That means wheelchairs, that means baby buggies, that means accessible to everybody in the community. The Legacy Park is currently growing in its use by all kinds of community groups, and we want to continue to see this little gem be a little gem in the center of Squamish. So the proposal would allow us the funding in order to pave that main trail so that it would become fully accessible to all members of the community. And we would be exceptionally proud to be able to do that. Our original management plan planned for that, and we would like to be able to take that next step. So I happen to have known Jason Wood and his family for the last 10 years or so, plus in fact, because they were founding members of our Nordic Club. They still continue to volunteer in that club and all over town, as many of you know. And why that's important to me and to our club is that this is a developer that is local. He cares about this town. He's trying to build a development that is environmentally sensitive with proposals that exceed what's being asked for in terms of contribution to the community. And the sense of environment that comes out of Jason every time I meet and talk with him on behalf of our club is that he cares about the environment there too. And so our club, Sea to Sky Nordics, and myself as president of that club, are proud to speak in favor of this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Last on my list is Chief Dale Harry. And as he approaches the mic, I just want to acknowledge publicly that Chief Dale was made Chancellor of Quest University at graduation. And Ma, Chesha, Gwen Harry received the first honorary degree from Quest. So just wanted to acknowledge that publicly.
Right. Aishka, thank you very much. My God, Chechman hat ten siai, Colton siam, Quin shaman sna, hot squouts, it stays, Hoxton squan chukwa, Tamitso tsitsa. The Colton siam, I'm one of the 16 chiefs from the Squamish Nation. It's a pleasure for being here today. It's a beautiful day today. And, you know, I just wanted to share that, knowing that you're all doing extremely a good job around here. And it's been a damn long time since I seen some of you guys, you know, through the COVID, and it's really good to see everyone. Seen Mayor Elliott, you know, number of times, you know, being at our events, and really pleased to see you there, and Doug, and of course Eric, you know, and certainly I just wanted to share that you know, Squamish Nation has always been open. You know, for me, it's good to be here again, and you know, certainly I know Jason Wood, and I got to let you know that I met Jason Wood through a personal good friend of mine. That was the late Rick Schnurr, and they were doing that thing with the Sky Ridge developments up there. And you know, one of the things that Rick had mentioned to me, he said, and and before he's passed and gone now, but you know what? He says, you can trust him. He will talk to you. He will speak to you. He will go up there and he will listen to you. He's a friend of mine. So, you know, even though as years went by, you know, I've known Jason, and I've known Diamond Head Developments, and I've known that, you know, they employed our First Nation members, not only Squamish, but First Nation members. And also, you know, we went through the whole process, and he had the blessing through the Squamish Nation and also the Tsleil-Waututh Nation for issuing some of those permits, archaeological permits. Anyone that does any kind of development, they have to go through the process, through rights and title. And, you know, he went down and he met with the people of ours down there, and they issued them. So the process went forward. And the another thing is that what I really like is that, you know, there's a contribution to our youth, you know, and certainly, you know, our youth will make a difference for tomorrow. But that's what we always focus on. My mother, she's 91. She says, you know what, son, I'm 91 years old. Everything I do is for the young people, for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You know, for me personally, I always like to see business, environment, and First Nations working together. And I see that here, especially the environment. You know, and dealing that business should not go ahead, you know, at the expense of environment. You know, my mother always said, you know what, son, if you're going to go and do something, she's still highest on the pecking order, you know, she's the elder. I'm only a chief. But you know what? She always said to me, just as long as they do it right, then things could go forward, right? In my mind, she said. So I just wanted to share through those things. And also, you know, even with our partnerships with the district, with businesses throughout our whole corridor, our nation has well over 4,000 acres of land around us. Fee simple, everything, right? You know, sometime we're going to be around here too. And we have been a number of times. But I just wanted to share those few words in support. You know, I really support what's here today, and as long as it's not the expense of the community. That's all I wanted to share, OCMA. And thank you very much, Mayor, for acknowledging myself and my mother. I'll let her know that. She doesn't watch us. It's hockey tonight, you know.
Fair enough. I know
All
why
right,
she's
thank you.
watching the hockey.
OCMA.
Thank you, Chief Dale. So I'm going to go to our moderator and see if there's any online speakers. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one online speaker. It's a call-in speaker. So call-in user, when you hear the beep, please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Hi, call-in user. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, my name is Sean Bickerton. Greetings, Mayor and Council. Thanks for taking the call. I live at number 4, 1038 Finch Drive. You may remember our little development, which is Hummingbird Lane, which is about 100 meters from this development site. I just wanted to start off by stating that I certainly don't oppose this development. It's well designed. It looks tasteful. We do have a few concerns, however. I just wanted to highlight those concerns and hope they can be taken into consideration as this moves forward. So the first is nice to hear some positive comments on the developer. We've had a little bit of an issue of what I would call trust with this development so far. So in January of 2021, I believe the DOS issued a blasting permit, or at least the permits required for site development. We got a notice hand-delivered to the door, which said that blasting would occur for about 2 months. And so it's been about 1.5 years and counting that we've endured blasting, beginning just after, let's say we can hear machinery working and ramping up and beginning first thing in the morning, 7 to 8 a.m., 6 days a week for the past 1.5 years. So understandably, that's the work that needs to occur with this type of development, but it's unfortunate that we haven't had more contact with the developer about the work that's ongoing. The first point I wanted to make about the development is we're a little concerned about the density, understanding that sustainable development includes density. When I hear density, I always wish that there was in big bracketed letters beside it the word profit. It's not lost on me. This is a business venture. I was happy to hear about all the sustainable efforts that the developers have made in moving this forward. But the increase in density in this area, it doesn't seem entirely necessary to me beyond normal levels that might be approved by this zoning. The height obviously comes into play when you're increasing density. Ultimately, the height, I think, will fit well with the landscape, but it's concerning in the sense that it seems as though it is in play to increase the number of units, ergo profit. I understand there's some market rentals that will come into play, but the idea that increasing density will somehow improve affordability in the Sea to Sky corridor or South Coast of BC in general, I believe is not a reality. If the density increases, those units will sell. They'll sell for market rates. The developer will profit, and we will all see the increase in traffic beyond what was highlighted as being desirable in the sub-area plan, of which we also were engaged in. So that's speaking to height. The fourth point here is more about is more concerning. It's about parking. So my very brief math today demonstrates that roughly 20% of the normal bylaw requirement for parking will be reduced for the units, but for rental units, that the normal bylaw amount required will be reduced by 40%. In exchange, I've read for increasing green space. The challenge here is, I don't think it's lost on anyone. If you look at any high density development in the town of Squamish, there's spillover of vehicles onto the roadways adjacent. So we have Bailey Street, we have Tantalus Road, we have the roadway adjacent to the golf course, we have Rivers Walk, or any development that's adjacent to a rail line. These are all full of spillover parking vehicles. So I'm extremely excited with the idea of a multi-use trail connecting this development to the existing multi-use trail in Loggers Lane. I believe that is a nice nudge in the way of, if you build it, they will come. Maybe they will reduce their vehicle usage and use these trails, and we'll see fewer vehicles on the road. But I believe the concept of high density developments reducing parking substantially is an inappropriate and ineffective nudge. I don't believe we will see decreased vehicles. and is extremely concerning that the rental units have a proposed 40% reduction in parking, given that to afford rental in this town, you often need multiple roommates, and there's an expectation there that they're all going to share one vehicle. I believe that's highly unrealistic. Just wanted to also mention as a fifth point here, we pre-development experienced high rates of speed of vehicles coming down that steep grade. I believe the grade's been reduced. However, I would implore the developers here to, and Mayor and Council to impose some sort of engineered traffic calming devices at the exit of the development.
That's
that
your
when
5
you
minutes
round the
if you
corner-
could wrap up.
Yep, no problem. Thank you. So traffic calming at the bottom. I just wanted to just highlight that good development should integrate with the community and not impose itself on the community. And I believe the parking reduction is significantly concerning and unnecessary. And perhaps the height benefit could be made in exchange for an extra level of internal parking in the apartment buildings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. We have another caller online.
Okay, our next caller is going to be Anthony Lamb. Anthony, when you hear the tone on your computer, your time starts. Please start your submission with your full name and address. Hi, Anthony, can you hear us?
Yeah, it's Anthony Lamb. I live at 71038 Finch Drive, and I've just got a couple of comments to make as well. Again, we're living in this area and fully aware of development in the area, and we always thought, buying into this area, this would be the case, and so we don't fundamentally depose any development in this area, but obviously very interested in a couple of areas. Having lived here, definitely haven't had the positive reflection from the developer at the moment. Extreme noise, inconsiderate noise, and inconsiderate parking around the exit to our property. And these are things that we've tried to reach out to the developer personally, and he's never personally returned any calls or any emails. And he sent people from the company, which have, some of them have been quite helpful and reasonable, and some of them have just basically tried to close us down. Frustrating to hear of 3 months of blasting, and then every morning we wake up at 7:30 in the morning to some sort of noise, and whether it's blasting or weekends spent drilling into rock. We're definitely not seeing an environmental from our point of view, because the change to the landscape in order to make this proposal has been quite astonishing. That the change to the hillside and the natural environment that used to sit at the end of Finch Drive has been overwhelmingly destroyed. So from an environmental point of view, I wouldn't be too happy with that. But my main issue really is with the parking. We heard the mayor on the radio recently talking about parking issues and some like research that's been done into it 2 or 3 years ago, and that was going to be renewed. So we know that the district is fully aware of parking challenges within Squamish, and to create major developments that can't even meet the standard parking just really blows me away. And I think that these studies should really focus on finding out some statistics about who lives in Squamish, how many cars they have, how they pay their rent. If they're paying $2,000, for a condo, are they really paying that alone, or are they having to have 2 people in there that need 2 cars? My partner and I like to work, but there's absolutely no, you'd see us on the loggers lane on the trails using these trails, but you'd also see vehicles parked at the property. And that would be the same for the people living in this development. They might be able to be more environmental and bike from this nice central location, but if they, a number of their other tasks will have to be completed using a vehicle. And while we all have our own perceptions, I think the council should really look at these ideas that people can now live in Squamish with limited parking. I just don't think it's realistic, and I really urge the Squamish district to look into this. And clearly, any proposal with reduced parking is about profit. It's about trying to push as many millions as they can out of the development. And to say that it's about green space, when you look at the plans, a lot of the green space they're trying to create is actually graded, not suitable for parking. Again, I would say that if they really need to be 6 stories up, then why can't they utilize some of that to actually make the place self-contained? Having lived on it, the developers and their contractors have made a wonderful demonstration over the last year of what happens when people don't park on the site, because we've had our school bus blocked leaving our property. We've had the verges going into people's properties damaged and cut up by parking, and that's just with the developers so far. But once they put all these people up onto that hill and they can't park, then there's going to be major issues on Finch Drive and Ravens around this area with the overflow parking. And I think for a local government that is concentrating on parking development for this town, I'm surprised that developers even think it appropriate to make proposals without sufficient parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more online callers? Okay, I'll come back to City Hall. Is there anyone else at City Hall who wishes to speak? Just raise your hand. I'll go to Council. Council, do you have any clarifying questions after hearing the submissions from the public? Council Herford.
Thank you. Just one of the questions that I know is easy to answer. Could staff, how many stories was one of the questions from one of the speakers, and I think this is an easy one, so we'll start there.
6 stories.
Thank you. Next, I've heard a couple of the speakers and some of the letters we got are around the some of the concerns revolved around the noise on site already. And could staff speak to what's in place around the whether it's construction hours or processing on site? And I know there's a difference between development and processing materials on site versus a mining operation where they're processing things on site, although they're maybe similar in actual function. So could we speak to that?
Through the mayor, the works ongoing on site are to construct the road to access the upper portion of the site. My understanding is that any noise associated with that would need to meet the noise bylaw. There might be exemptions for blasting permits, obviously, but I'm not very familiar with how that interplays with the noise bylaw. But my understanding is that works need to abide by the construction requirements in the noise bylaw.
And have it through that process, have any complaints been received or any violations issued in relation to the work performed so far?
I believe that complaints have been received, but I don't believe that any violations to the noise bylaw have been issued.
Thank you. Last question. There was a suggestion of some traffic calming at the bottom of the access for the vehicles coming off the hill, and seeing as that's adjacent to the affordable housing piece right on the corner, and I believe the active transportation is going to be on the other side of the road. Has there been consideration on the specific design of that piece, whether a raised crosswalk table, for instance, would be appropriate, or something along those lines to sort of get out ahead of these issues, or is that something that is considered later in the process?
Through the mayor, that's something that will be considered later on in the process should this development move forward and the servicing agreement be worked on for the improvements at the bottom there.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I heard some, I guess, assertions or questions around more density than normal. But I thought I heard earlier in the staff report that this development qualifies for a number of density bonuses it is not taking advantage of. So just want to clarify, that this is using less than the allowable density. Just if staff can clarify that, and then also, is this proposing more density than the neighborhood plan allows for?
Through the mayor, it is under the allowable base density in the neighborhood plan. It could qualify for more because it would meet a number of the density bonus options outlined in the plan, but it is under the allowable base density outlined in the plan.
And just relative to the neighborhood plan, is this more or less density?
It is allowed. So the base density allowed in the hillside housing area of the neighborhood plan, this is under that allowable base density.
Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. I wonder if staff could address concerns related to the risk posed by not just the existing Fortis pipeline, but also the proposed expanded pipeline.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, and it has come up in the past. I think the context in which local governments operate is important to note here. So we assess developments from various perspectives. A lot of it is provided and outlined to us by the province. So the Local Government Act, the Community Charter, there's legislation that outlines what the local government's role is. And we rely on senior level agencies, the federal, the provincial government, to a certain aspect on things that are outside of our jurisdiction. And utilities, pipelines, these are things that are regulated at the provincial level. And there is nothing at that level to suggest that we shouldn't be planning for this in this area. So there's, I guess there's two sides to this coin. There's us planning our community, and there's quite a bit of land along the proposed and the existing Fortis pipeline. And there's also then the pipeline proponents that have to ensure that they are addressing community risk. So I think that's where we are. And just to note that there are a lot of pipelines in the Lower Mainland that run through quite dense communities, so it's not out of the ordinary. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Staff, could you just remind me about the car and bike share program? Do we know how many cars or how many bikes will be provided?
Not at this time. There's a cost estimate of $100,000 associated with it, so that will have to be, that amount of money will be spent on e-bikes, and or it might be, it was 100 or 120,000, but that essentially that amount will have to be spent on the actual infrastructure, and then it will be up to the developer to set up that program amongst the residents of the development.
Councillor Stoner.
Just on that point, to clarify that those amenities are intended to be for the residents only, or are they more broadly meant to be integrated into our broader car share program, for example, with Moto?
It's for the residents of this development.
Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, there are some references made to comparisons to other areas with parking like Eagle Wind and on Bailey there, or Buckley, I just get the name mixed up. Bailey, had it right the first time. I'm just wondering if staff, I mean, in my mind, there's a hill which sort of adds significant effective distance. How close are these? Are these comparable in terms of distance, or is there more of a significant distance? And I know it's hard to sort of measure the effective impact of a hill, but just as a crow flies, is this a similar distance, or is it a much further distance?
Sorry, distance from, are we talking about the length of the hill that will have to, or the distance from the residents at the bottom of Finch to the top of the hill, or?
Yeah, the development sort of towards the bottom of Finch relative to the apartments proposed at this development.
There are 2 apartment buildings proposed at the bottom of the hill and then 2 at the top of the hill. So the ones at the bottom would be quite close. However, it is extremely unlikely that there will be on-street parking on Finch Drive in the future, given the limited area for the road there because there's environmentally sensitive ditches on the north side. So it's going to be quite a tight area to fit infrastructure. And there's going to be the multi-use path from the end of Finch over to Loggers. So it's unlikely that there will be on-street parking allowed on Finch in the future.
Okay, seeing no other hands from council, we'll just go back to our moderator. Is there anyone online? So that's *3 on the phone or the hand icon on WebEx. And I'll just check again if there's anyone at City Hall who wishes to speak. Nothing? Okay. Seeing no hands here online or from council. If there I have asked council. Now that I've heard from everyone on the speakers list, it is a requirement that I ask 3 times if there's anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. So for the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? And again, that's *3 on your phone or the hand icon on WebEx if you wish to speak. For a second time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak or make a submission? Come forward, name and address or neighborhood, and you've got 5 minutes.
Hello, Pierre Freely, 1021 Raven Drive, 30-year resident of that address. I'm just reiterating what's already been said. Raven Drive, unlike Finch, is a single-lane road for the last half of it. So with a reduction in parking, I would foresee that I would have people trying to park on Raven Drive. It's been expressed that it's unlikely that Finch will have room. Raven Drive has even less. So I just don't really see the logic in trying to reduce parking for this high density development. That's one thing. But my main issue is the degree of noise that we're subjected to is quite literally ridiculous. Starting at 7 in the morning every day for the last, starting like a year ago or a year and a half ago, whatever it's been, right until like 5 o'clock at night. And sometimes it's just a low constant rumbling. Other times it's rock hammers. I'm sure they have rock crushing units on the hill. And so the noise is sometimes a low rumbling, sometimes a sharp rock hammering, sometimes rock crushing. And so this goes beyond condominium development. This is a mine site on a hillside, and it's elevated and projecting down at the neighborhood. And we're all listening to this constantly. I'm what we would hope Squamish is advocating is people that work from home, computer-based, so we're not all driving to Vancouver. So that brings up another side issue is probably lots of these people are going to be driving either the Whistler or Vancouver. So anyways, forget that point. I live at home and work from home. And so I try to have peace of mind when I'm working, and I can't because it's just a constant stream of noise. So I find that incredibly disrespectful. And I just wish that would stop. And the only way I can see that stopping is if they took the amount, so they've created a 20-meter rock cut to reduce the grade to get on the hill. All of that rock has been moved up onto the property. So now there's a 20 or 30-meter pile of large angular rock on the hill, and beside it is a smaller pile of reduced rock. And what's presently going on is they're taking this large riprap sized rock and reducing it with rock hammers and rock crushers into a smaller rock, which they'll presumably use on site. And I foresee this going on for a very long time, and I just can't tolerate that. It's untenable and disrespectful, and on the basis of that angst, I can't support what's going on. I do recognize that growth is inevitable, and we're going to be seeing density all through Squamish, and my neighborhood in particular seems to be getting more of that than the rest of Squamish. We have the development on the hill, development across the street, the Maples, the west side of Finch will be having a large development. The east side of Finch will be having 2 lots conjoined and then turned into condominiums, and then the thing on the hill. So it's a huge amount of change in a very small area, and the degree of noise is just, as I said, untenable. So that's my major complaint. So I know it's unrealistic, but I would suggest they take that pile of rock and move it somewhere else and break it down into the final gravel, so I don't have to listen to it, or the rest of the neighbors that have also been complaining. And then the final point is on process. It costs a lot of money to drill and blast and bring down the grade 20 meters, move all that rock up to another place. So that degree of monetary investment seems to me is more than you can anticipate getting back on single family development. Seems to me that they already anticipate that they're going to get this rezoning so that they can build condominiums. Then that brings in the question, why do we have a public hearing to consider rezoning when it's probably de facto given that that's what's going to happen? Otherwise, they wouldn't have made this degree of investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freely. Okay. Council Pengill?
Yeah, just following up on some of the questions about noise. I understand in some areas, if they are zoned as resource, that there's a lot of provincial sort of determination on what's allowed and that sort of thing. Is there any difference in terms of why this rock is being crushed, or the uses and so on, in terms of our ability to regulate times or hours or noise or anything like that?
Through you, Mayor. It's something that we can certainly take a look at going forward with the proponent. There's always an assumption that there's going to be some rock processing on site when you have, a road going through a rocky area. But to what extent is it actually allowable on that side is something that we can certainly take a look at from a land use and from a noise perspective. I think that's a little bit outside of the scope of the rezoning application, because it is being done for a road, and just a bit of a background on this application. It started with a subdivision proposal pursuant to current zoning. So that's how the road the road consideration started with the district, and from there on it turned into, we went through a sub-area planning process, and now we're at the rezoning application. But that's something that we can certainly take a look at.
All right, we have one caller online.
Yes, we have Anthony Lamb again. So Anthony, no need to restate your name and address, but when you hear the tone, it's your turn to speak, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, yes.
Anthony?
Yep. I'm
Perfect,
here.
thanks.
Thanks. I was I was really pleased with your action from the council there about the noise, and they picked up and showed concern, and I really appreciate the question. Was there complaints? Well, I know there was, because I know a number of people that complained. But basically listen to the last caller, basically what's happened is there's been a mining operation following the noise complaints for basic construction. That's what's been allowed to happen. I think this could be a good learning, for the district, that they're basically, they've spent all day Saturdays, sunny Saturdays, drilling, into the rock with no consideration for any of the neighbors. And the point that I've made to them directly is that these laws are in place about noise and construction noise. They're taking on an average, they're taking on an average construction noise. And if people are basically going to take on a mining operation and do these sort of things, they're benefiting from the average and taking it to the extreme. And I really feel that as Squamish develops, I think they need to clarify whether they're following the average construction noise, or if they are creating a mining operation, which should follow very, very different hours of work. Because at the moment, as we know, they can and they do this 7 days a week, and it's been very disappointing. And it really makes us worry about the developer, because he's really not been willing to front up and talk to the neighborhood, other than to tell us it would be 3 months and then do it for a year and a half. And then I think another learning from the district is that they clearly invested millions and millions into this site to build this huge dense development on the premise that there was just going to be, they're going to take down 8 single family homes and then put up another few. I mean, like, it doesn't take an economist to work out that that was never the intention. It's been done in a phase so that they can get all this work done under a different premise, and then they've completely changed it. And I really feel that developers working with this community need to be more straight talking as a respect to the community, but also a respect to the district and the decisions you're trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. All right, we don't have any more callers online. I'll just, council, any final questions? Okay. Yes, Councilor Pango.
So I just want to clarify one of the comments it just made, which is different than my understanding. So there's been some assertions that this was proposed under a different context and then it was changed and that was part of a tactic. But as I understand, we did a comprehensive neighborhood plan and it was sort of this body that decided that density was appropriate there, and that sort of imposed a change on the development. Or I'm just wondering if staff can speak a little bit to how this changed.
Through the chair, so the property is zoned RS1. Initially, an application came in to subdivide the property and build a road. The existing homes on site were accessed by a 23% grade gravel driveway, and I believe had covenants on title stating that the fire department would not go up there in the event of an emergency because they could not on such a road. So the applicant was allowed to, under the current zoning, submit a subdivision application and to, replace the driveway or build a new road to new lots, a new road to new lots. The neighborhood planning exercise started, and they revised their proposal based on the outcome of the neighborhood plan. So they went through, the neighborhood planning exercise went through, and their proposal changed based on the outcome of that.
Okay, now that I've heard from everyone on the speakers list, it is a requirement that I ask 3 times if there is anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. For the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? For a second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? And for the third and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Please note that council members are not permitted to receive any further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. This means that we can't speak to you out in the community or receive emails, phone calls, or any of these bylaws until a decision on the bylaw has been made. Any and all communication from this point must be channeled to staff. If there are no further speakers, then I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you very much for your submissions this evening. So, council, as you heard from the staff report, staff are proposing third reading after the public hearing. That is at the discretion of council. And that appears on your agenda. Councillor Stoner moves third reading. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Comments, Councillor Stoner?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm happy to move third reading for the amendment bylaw for rezoning Upper Finch Drive. After hearing from a number of folks in the community, both for and against the project during the public hearing, I just want to highlight some of the things that I think are particularly notable and address some of the concerns that I heard. So I think one of the key components is that we did go through almost two-plus year process to identify the neighborhood plan for Loggers East. And this proponent has come in with a proposal that is under the allowable base density. So although it is higher than what is the current single family RS1 zoning, it does match with the vision that we've seen and has been created by the community for this area. This area is well suited for increased density. It is close to amenities. It is central to town. And as I look through the list of community amenity contributions that are being proposed by the proponent, I think that not only is this a good area for density, but we're seeing a lot of positives for the community. In particular, the 34 affordable housing units, 2 of which will be donated to the Housing Society. This does set a new precedent, and I think one that we discussed earlier today in our committee of the whole around how we update our community amenity contribution policy. This will be really critical to help the Housing Society be an effective body and provide the Housing Society with a revenue source that will allow it to operate in the future. In addition to that, the commitment to the no gas covenant, step 5 for duplexes and townhomes, the childcare space, the multi-use pass, the 1 million cash in lieu and critical amenities, and the list goes on. Direct benefit for the legacy park that is right within the neighborhood. And the other key part as I look through the agreement is that many of these amenities are front loaded. The 1 million cash is coming to us at adoption. The affordable housing is in the first component of the build, as well as the multi-use pass. So these are the things that I think our community needs now, and I'm happy to see that they are at the start of the project. I did hear some concerns around the parking reductions and that reducing parking is not a realistic way to move forward, but I do believe that we need to be building for the future and not looking into the past. Parking challenges to me are not addressed by building more parking. They're addressed by building more complete communities, increasing transit, providing alternative forms of transportation like car shares and bike shares, as well as charging a fair price for use of public roadways if they are being used for spillover parking, which I don't think will be a concern given the narrowness of the streets in this area. So I think that if there are spillover effects, they will be managed on site and by the future residents of this area. Lastly, I heard some assertions around concerns around transparency of process. I just want to make clear that the investments that have been made by the road or by the proponent for the road building was done with risk by the developer to choosing to take that on with the initial subdivision application. That there was no predetermination in this process. But the neighborhood plan that then emerged was what allowed for the increase in density after the fact. So that was a risk that the developer was willing to take on and not one that swayed my intentions or voting this evening. I do hear the complaints around the noise for the neighbors in terms of that road building, and I think that that is something that does need to be considered by both staff and the proponent as we walk away tonight. The discussions and comments that I've heard this evening does make me a little bit concerned in terms of the amount that we're asking the neighborhood to contend with, especially through length of development. So I think that our staff and the proponent have heard that. And I don't think that that is a reason to withhold the rezoning this evening. So I'll be voting in favor of the motion. Thank you.
You seconded? Go ahead, Councillor Pettengill, and I'll come to you, Councillor French.
Yeah, thanks. There's a lot of good feedback and a lot of things I want to touch on. I think it is something, having gone through a rather lengthy pickleball discussion, the impact of sound and the importance of that to our community is something that we can't take lightly. I don't think rezoning is the proper place to address that, but I do think that needs to be addressed, and whether that's voluntarily through the developer or changes to our bylaws or monitoring, I think that's something we need to find a way to resolve. And I think that can be done and should be done independently of the rezoning. We did go through a long neighborhood planning process, and as we've heard, this is under the allowable density. There was a lot of discussion and public debate and so on about this neighborhood plan, and this is consistent with that. And so I think it makes sense to support a development that aligns with that neighborhood plan. I did raise concerns, even with the neighborhood plan, about, we had a lot of verbiage around, walkable communities and mode shift, moving away from the car. I was concerned about the high amount of parking. This has, I believe, aligns with the neighborhood plan. And like my colleague, we just had a presentation from UBC where they spoke to what I've been reading about in other research, to induced demand, where I don't discount some of the challenges with parking, but it's what is the most effective solution. And all the evidence seems to point to the more you add on-site parking and so on, you get more cars and more of a general parking problem. And it's just a vicious cycle. So I think parking is something to be addressed, but it is not addressed by more on-site parking. I think from the research I've read and some of what we've heard, resident parking passes for streets and increased enforcement and so on. Those are the tools how we manage those things more effectively, I believe. And I think as we look towards the future and our climate crisis, it is important that people moving to these new developments understand that they need to plan for not relying on cars nearly as much as we have in the past. And if we have to, in the short to medium term, enforce that with parking passes and so on, maybe that is what we need to do. But I think we need to build around a future where we are not as dependent on such resource intensive machines. I think from the climate perspective, there is a lot to like about this development. It is going above and beyond in many aspects in terms of addressing the climate crisis. And I think that's important to show other developments what is possible, and to drive other developments in other places to meet that high bar, because it proves that it can be done. And that ties to the final thing. I have raised concerns about the pipeline. I think I do have more concerns than some people and even staff in terms of our, I think, necessity of us planning around that. We had a resolution earlier today to try and address that, because that is really something that Fortis is, I think, imposing, and hopefully we will get more clarity and we can plan appropriately around that, and hopefully find a way for Fortis to find a better route. But at this point, I think that is the path to address my concerns, and I think community concerns around the pipeline, rather than at this point hold up a development that is really otherwise hitting the mark in terms of the climate. And the pipeline is not this development's fault. And if we have to adjust building siting and so on later based on some of the information we get back, then we can cross that bridge when we get there. But at this point, I think all in all, it makes sense to move forward with this. Thank you.
Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. First, I want to thank all those who shared their thoughts as part of the public hearing. And next, I want to emphasize that I heard everything everybody said, and that includes those who want an outcome that's different from where I think we're going with this project and supporting it. I read all the email messages expressing concerns, and I understand those concerns. This development, though, ticks a long list of boxes for me, and my council colleagues have expressed that long list quite eloquently, so I won't spend too much time going over the same points. But it's infill development. It puts density in a place where I think it fits well. It provides our community with much needed properties for our new housing society, 32 units of vital purpose-built rental apartments, 25 childcare spaces at least, homes built up to step 5 of the energy code, and more. I truly believe that putting residential buildings taller than 4 floors against steep slopes is an excellent development strategy for our community. I will be voting in favor of third reading.
Thank you, Councillor French. Councillor Anderson, then Race and Herford.
Thank you. I'll also be speaking in favor of third reading. I would like to address a number of the points that have been made by our correspondents and our guests here this evening. Starting with the construction noise. What we have also experienced, or the past council no doubt received correspondence regarding the development process at Crumpet Woods. And we're going to have to learn as we go, but there definitely was some experience there on the part of the neighbors, and I hope that we are ready to meet the demands of these situations with our construction management strategies and bylaw enforcement. I don't have too many concerns regarding the parking, and I'm crossing my fingers and hoping with Councillor Pettingill that the owners will make a sober consideration of the parking constraints that they will face in this development. There simply isn't practical space on either Finch or Raven. One of our speakers has addressed that we need to do more in gathering statistics and around car use and the car dependency in rental units. And this is something that I've raised in the past and that planning department has acknowledged. We are and we must continue to gather experience and information on this issue. We don't know enough about the future parking demand for rental blocks. The Legacy Park will see some changes, and I think that we have to welcome these in the bigger context of park and recreation facilities in the wider area. We've been through the Brennan Park planning process, and that's still ongoing, and it is clear that the demands for these facilities will only grow, and that this means certain expectations need to be met at the Legacy Park grounds for new types of uses and increased use. One of our guests and correspondents, Pierre Freele, has concerns going back several years regarding our broader land use planning in this area, and I share a number of his concerns and did before I came on council. A lot of these today are in hindsight, but for me, the decisions made by past councils regarding rezonings and housing developments north of Raven Drive, I would not have been supportive of. I've long been aware of the environmental attributes of this area, but these decisions have been made, these developments are there, and we can't go back. We must learn, and this is also a lesson pointing this way, to build on the hillside. And we will and we have to learn from this development. And I think this development has strove to be a leader in learning lessons, no doubt learned from Dowd Drive and previous project. And I agree with Chief Dale Harry on 2 points. While he's making the observation, pointing out the Squamish Nation does own lands in the vicinity, and there may reasonably be expectation on the part of the Squamish Nation these lands will be developed for housing. We'd better learn from this development for any future developments of this nature. We are going to see more of it, and as Chief Dale Harry also has, as long as we do it right. Referring again to construction noise, this will be part of our learning, and we need to take this seriously, not only the developer, but and other developers, but our staff and our whole district apparatus. We need to encourage a construction management strategy on these types of sites for noise and dealing with rock. And I'm confident that there can be some good dialogue here ongoing with the developer and our staff. And I'm pleased to see that Mr. Velaniskis has acknowledged that that we can, quote, take a look at this, and I do encourage this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Race.
Thank you. First of all, let me deal with the noise. Which I have to say I'm quite sympathetic to. I think you know, that kind of noise for long periods of time would probably drive me around the bend as well. And I guess there's a certain inevitability to any kind of activity happening on a rock face that there's going to be some blasting and drilling. But I would certainly urge staff and the proponent to consider revising schedules or deciding how that might best be done to minimize the impact. But it is not, for me, a zoning issue. It does not determine land use, which is fundamental to zoning. It is the process of getting to the ultimate land use, and so it is separate from zoning. has been noted, and I'm not going to repeat the details. Other councillors have expressed it quite fully. We have gone through recently a significant public engagement to develop a neighborhood plan, and this proposal is consistent with that neighborhood plan. It is 6 stories. In my view, that does work in this location. It would not work from my perspective in other parts of Loggers East neighborhood where a building would rise straight out of a flat plane. But being set it back against hillsides, I think certainly does minimize the visual impact on surrounding areas, and so is acceptable in a way of getting density here without any kind of an eyesore. There are significant amenities associated with this project. We have an amenity policy. This project has exceeded it significantly, and I think that has to be noted. The parking has been reduced, and I understand the concerns, and I can recall a conversation we had at one of the earlier meetings about this and the variance. And coming away from that thinking that this development in its final form will not be for everybody. And anybody purchasing in this development or renting in this development who is part of a family unit that requires 2 vehicles will be in the wrong place. Quite simply, there is no other place to park. If we enforce parking regulations on Finch and Raven and the nearby streets to minimize or eliminate that, basically you either park in your spot in the development or you're way, way, way far away. And that's different from some of the other locations that were mentioned by one of the speakers. And in the Solterra development in behind Save On Foods, for example, the parking that's referred to by the rail line is just right across the street. On Loggers Lane, the parking that's running down the old BC rail line is just right next to the building. It's very convenient for people to just park their cars anywhere in those locations. It will not be convenient for people to park off the site in this location. And so I think it will force, as some of my fellow councillors have alluded to, I think it will force a behavior change or a certain type of purchaser prepared to come in and use e-bikes or walk or do whatever to make that work for them. Otherwise, they're going to be frustrated and in the wrong place. I have to add that when this came to first reading and second reading, I voted against this proposal. And I did that because I wanted to help set a precedent to get fee simple title to units as an amenity contribution for our housing society, our newly incorporated housing society. And the developer, I have some sympathy with the developer because I think it kind of put him on the spot. We didn't have a policy about that before. It probably was not expected. But to the developer's credit, he came to the table and there are 2 units, as we've heard, being donated free and clear to this housing society for the district's society to then turn around and rent out as affordable units. That's probably not all that I would have liked. That's why I voted against it on the first 2 readings, but I have to concede that is a fair contribution at this point, and we'll see how this policy develops going forward. So with all of that, I am supporting this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Herford.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the motion, as others have stated, this area recently went through an extensive planning exercise that had its own public process before adoption, and this fits that plan. The amenities offered exceed our policy, and I do want to highlight the creativity of the developer to be able to come with the 2 units, a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom for the Squamish Community Housing Society. It sets a standard, I believe, that hopefully will be expressed in our upcoming CAC policy as we move through. So that sort of kickstarts the society on its way, in my opinion, as well as the front loading of the rental units in the process. I won't go through the long list of of features here, although I do appreciate them. And excuse me, one second. Hopefully that'll get me there. I do appreciate them, and they've been highlighted by my colleagues. I think part of what I'm hearing now has been sort of summed up with being a good neighbor. And as we're developing the site and we're bringing new people to the community and to that neighborhood in particular, I think there's an opportunity here to do better and set a standard. So whether that's the construction noise at this point, which will change throughout the process, but at this point involves the drilling and blasting and rock crushing. And I'd like to make sure that the proponent works with our staff to figure out what is appropriate there and would err on the side of reasonable action instead of pushing up against the limits of what is technically allowed under the rules. And that goes further as we go into construction phase. We're going to have there's concerns of parking on this site, and I don't want to lose track of the fact that it's also during construction. There's going to be crews, and specific thoughts going to need to be given to how those next pieces of planning are done, so they don't start out by infuriating the neighborhood during construction and things only getting better when we get to the finish line. So as well as communicating the parking that is available at build out to the buyers and tenants or property managers of the facility. So I think that's going to be something that's ongoing, and I'd like to hear back some victories in this regard. So, but I will be supporting, and thank you everyone for the hard work on this.
Okay, since it's almost 8 o'clock, I'll keep it short. It's great to see the developments come forward that are in line with the Loggers East neighborhood plan. I am really excited to see this step 5 development, along with the CAC package that includes 2 units for the housing society. I think they both set a good precedent that council can set a higher bar for developers. There's some critical facilities that are part of this development: 34 affordable units, the child care facility, and making the Legacy Park truly accessible, which was its original vision. And I think the acknowledgement of First Nations youth in our community and the importance of starting to contribute the benefits from these lands, not just to the district, but to the nation as well. So I was happy to see that. There are small things like the commitment to have storage in the suites. That's a huge problem for maintaining the Squamish lifestyle. So I appreciate that. We did pass a motion earlier today for me to write a letter to the BC Oil and Gas Commission, Minister Ralston, to ask for a risk analysis on the pipeline and that be shared publicly. So council is trying to get on top and understand that going forward. And generally, you know, the parking is a higher requirement than what we have downtown, but I think is reasonable because of the bike share and the car share, but also just a general need for us all to rethink our relationship with the car. I am still very optimistic about regional transit, which means that people can move north and south, not in a single occupancy vehicle. This council and the council before expanded transit with every year. The provincial government slowed us down the last 2 years by not funding expansion, but Squamish did manage to sneak in a little bit of one. Unfortunately, then our buses went on strike. So I'm also optimistic on that front that we'll get buses back on the road. But I think this neighborhood is close enough to recreation facilities, close enough to downtown, that between car share, bike share, and eventually transit, that we imagine will be down Loggers Lane, that people will have a different option than relying on multiple cars for each household. I am sensitive to the noise issue that was raised. While it's not a bylaw related issue, it is something that's always on council's mind as people try and live within the pressures that growth brings. I know noise became an issue for folks down near the Sea and Sky development, and that proponent works very closely with their own contractors to try and mitigate that noise to help the neighbors in that area. So I think, we need to look at those issues around noise, and the pressure will be on in this area. This isn't the only development that has come forward for us. There's 2 more that we dealt with at Committee of the Whole just a few weeks ago in this area, and another one that we expect will come back to us soon. So that's a lot to put on one neighborhood. And so we really need to be conscious of when do they get a break from construction noise and what those limits should be. But with that, I am supporting 3rd reading. So if there's no other comments, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, staff. Thanks everyone again for your patience tonight while we worked out the audio issues. And motion to terminate. Councillor Pettengill, really?
What we have heard, I think, from the public and from council, some concern and questions about the noise. I think staff said, they could look at things. I just want to clarify, is some sort of direction needed, or staff has enough to sort of move something forward or take a look at this? And I think, maybe with amplification of a hillside, there is a bit of something different here that needs to be considered. So I'm just wondering, concrete next steps, what needs to happen?
Through you, Mayor. I think we've got enough feedback. I think everybody talked about noise and the need for construction management. So our next steps are going to be connecting with the proponent and understanding exactly what's happening, looking at our bylaw and looking how we can exceed the bylaw. I'm sure there's going to be willingness to work with the proponent. So we heard the message loud and clear.
Motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Herford, second by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.